Hello, and welcome to Your Sparkly Brand. We're here to inspire and empower female entrepreneurs like you. This podcast is all about delivering no fluff, high value content that helps you grow your business. It doesn't matter if you have no budget and are still DIYing everything on your own. We're giving you the tips, tools, and strategies you need to build a sparkly empire. I'm Lauren Tassi, your copywriter and launch strategist, and I'm joined by my co-host, marketing and branding expert, Megan Gersh. Hi, Megan.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing good.
I'm super excited to introduce you to our guest today, Jane Labowitch, aka Princess Etch. Jane is a full-time Etch A Sketch artist based in Maryland. She started playing with an Etch A Sketch when she was 4, and she never stopped. So it's been her full-time career since 2016. So welcome to the podcast, Jane. I'm so excited to have you.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on the podcast today.
So before we jump into your story, we like to start each episode with our sparkly moment of the week. It's a small win, a celebration, something like that. So Meg, what was your sparkly moment of the week?
Yeah, so I've been working with a business coach, and one of the things that she has been suggesting that I do is to really refine my offering. So right now I offer about 8 different services, and so I'm getting it down to 3-ish services. So that's been quite the endeavor to kind of really take a look at like what's been working, what hasn't been working, and also like what I'm passionate about, what I want to keep doing in my business. So I've been working a lot on that kind of behind the scenes. And yeah, I mean, it feels good to just be making progress on that. So yeah, what about you?
So I feel like I have jumped a year in my business in like a week this week. I've hired 2 VAs. I bring a copy editor on my team. I just feel like I'm like slowing my business down and I need to let more people support me to move things along.
That's awesome. And Jane, do you have one that you want to share as well?
Yeah, so my sparkly moment was earlier this weekend. I was looking through the Etch A Sketch hashtag on Twitter, as I want to do, and I inadvertently stumbled into a post that Joseph Gordon-Levitt made about my Etch A Sketch art, just out of the blue. It had happened like 6 months ago and I had absolutely no clue, and I just found it on Twitter. So that was a really unexpected and super cool endorsement, totally out of left field. So it was definitely truly random and really cool. So I got to share that moment with my fans and followers over the last few days, and that's been pretty fun. Yeah, definitely my sparkliest moment.
I love that so much. So we're going to do a new segment in the podcast, and this is called Speak Your Mind. And that's because we want to hear more from our listeners. So we're going to ask a question. And if you're listening on Spotify, you can go right in through the app and answer the question, or you can leave your answer on social media. If you could make playing with your favorite childhood toy into a business, what toy would it be? I'm going first. And I knew as soon as I thought of this question, my answer was Barbies. I love all the clothes. I love all the accessories, the tiny shoes. Barbie gets a dream house. Barbie has a Porsche. I love all the style. I love the bright colors. That is just the world I would live in.
I feel like that's perfect for you. And it definitely ties to what you do now as well. So that's amazing. Mine would definitely have to be light bright, just because I could totally see, like, I love the design aspect of it. I could totally see if I were to like use it in business as like kind of like a bullet journal type situation where I could like mark things off. But yeah, I just love the kind of like you can create anything either from a template or just kind of do your own thing. So yeah, that would be my choice.
Obviously, Jane, this would be your second favorite toy. What would you make another business out of?
I love both of those choices. Of course, Etch A Sketch being my first, but it's a really interesting question to ask because I'll probably get into this a little bit, but my love of Etch A Sketch began because I would go visit my grandma growing up and she wouldn't let me watch TV. So I played with an Etch A Sketch to pass the time, but there was another pastime that I participated in a lot that I kind of like let fall by the wayside. And that was I would take a deck of cards and build these like intricate kind of like sculptural tower-esque things. And if I could, I guess, make a living off of like becoming a deck of playing card sculptor, I guess that would be my backup career. So not sure how that one would work. But, you know, you see people who do really cool things with dominoes. So I think we would be kindred spirits.
All right, so you're pivoting us in a perfect way, Jane. Why don't you start by telling us about your journey? How did you turn this into a business?
Oh man. So I started, like I said, when I was 4, and it was the product of boredom. I just was obsessed with Etch A Sketch from a young age, and I didn't even realize other people weren't good at the toy until I got a fair amount older. I had older siblings, but I just figured they weren't very artistically inclined, so they just didn't have an aptitude for Etch A Sketch or drawing in general. When I got a bit older, around high school, I started sharing my art online, and the internet was a very different landscape 15 years ago. But even from that time, I was getting a disproportionate amount of attention and positive responses and feedback for the Etch A Sketch art specifically. So that kind of influenced my decision to go to art school after I graduated from high school. Fast forward a few years, I have a degree in illustration. I worked part-time for a few years and kind of supplemented my income doing part-time freelance illustration and Etch A Sketch art. And then after 3 years working that part-time job, I decided to take that full-time leap into freelance. And it's been 6 years now, and somehow I've been able to keep a career as an Etch A Sketch artist afloat, and it's been fantastic.
That's so awesome. So I know you kind of touched on this a little bit, but like, are there other competitors in your niche? I mean, I know based on like what I've chatted with you personally about, but like, if there are other competitors, how many are there? Are they worldwide? Like, what differentiates you from the other artists that are out there?
Yeah, there are a very, very small number of competitors. I am one of 2 full-time Etch A Sketch artists. The other one is based in Los Angeles, and we've worked together on a number of occasions. One nice thing is that I'm on the East Coast, he's on the West Coast, so we also kind of do different kinds of work as well. So a lot of my work does kind of, in a Venn diagram, intersect with what he does, but as an Etch A Sketch artist, I will do commission work, I will do live event work where I'm doing live portraits, I will do workshops and live streaming. The beauty of being in such a small niche is that it's a big, big world. So I've been able to differentiate myself, and I feel like there's plenty of work to go around for the industry of Etch A Sketch artistry.
So I see you wearing your signature color. How important has branding been in your business?
Oh, it's been incredibly important because even though I am in this small niche and there are a very small number of competitors, so to say, all of whom are my friends, I do find that by having my own personal branding and having my own, business, it really sets me apart from the rest of the pack. I'm able to use my own voice and my own brand and provide a special custom service through that people can connect with and identify with. And, for me, it's more important not to find somebody who wants to work with an Etch A Sketch artist, but someone who wants to work specifically with me. So having that special custom branding around what I provide as an artist is of paramount importance because I want people to connect with me, not just what I do.
I have a question about the brand specifically. So, like, your kind of surname is Princess Etch, right? Like, so was that a name that you gave to yourself? Is that a follower gave that to you, or how did that come about?
So once upon a time in the age of MySpace, I was interacting with Christoph Brown. He's the Etch A Sketch artist in Los Angeles, and I found him on MySpace back when I was in high school. And basically, I emailed him and I was like, how do I do this for a living? Because he was at the time already experimenting with doing it for a living. And he kind of clued me into the fact that at that time on the internet, all of the Etch A Sketch artists who were active in sharing their art sort of came up with their own monikers. And it felt really natural because with the internet, we all come up with usernames and we sort of were already experimenting with the concept of brands. And so at first I thought about it and I thought, oh, well, the Etch A Sketch girl, like that's easy peasy. I'm a girl and I draw in an Etch A Sketch. But then I slipped on it another night and I'm like, well, I don't want to just be like the Etch A Sketch girl. Like I want to level that up. I want to be Princess Etch. And so at the time it was Princess Etch A Sketch. And then fast forward a few years, the toy had been sold to a new company. I got a very friendly but professional email from one of the lovely lawyers at the company that sells Etch A Sketch. And they're like, we love what you do, but you got to drop part of that. And so, whoop, that's when it became Princess Etch. And it stuck and it felt like a really natural choice. I'm very grateful that, 17-year-old me had the presence of mind to come up with this concept and stick with it, because it's truly something that I feel like, it's a name that felt right, and it's totally stuck with me for all this time.
I love that. And so I had one other question too for anybody that's listening to this podcast. Princess Etch and I have had the pleasure of working together on some projects, but I know that before we were working together, you were catering to a very different audience. And you kind of, when we started working together, you made it a point to say like, okay, I want to try to pivot to work with more like corporate type clients. Can you talk a little bit about that pivot, like what drove it and how like you are making that shift in your business?
Yeah. So before I reached out to you for a whole rebrand, I found myself in an interesting position where I would get the occasional corporate work, and then that would pay me, multiple months worth of my income. So I'd get one corporate job, and then I'd have all these like smaller jobs that kind of filled in the cracks. And I found that I was putting so much of my attention into the lower priced options that I offer that I felt like it wasn't really the best use of my time. And I still do a little bit of that stuff, but I really wanted the rebrand to focus on trying to get more of that corporate work, because I recognized I wanted to push my business to a new platform, and I wanted to focus on what I already considered to kind of be the best assets that the business had to offer. I already had a roster of high-end corporate clients, and I felt like I wasn't properly capitalizing on those assets. And I also felt like, to put it very bluntly, I almost felt like in a lot of ways I was casting pearls to swine, in that I was offering this like premium tier service, but I wasn't offering it to the right people. Like, I was offering it to somebody whose budget might have only been $100. And so I found that I kept trying to sell a $5,000 service to somebody who only has $100 to spend. And so I recognized that my branding at that time was not helping me in that endeavor. And it wasn't doing me any favors in helping me to get more of those $5,000 clients. And so I knew it was time to make that investment in my business, because it wasn't sustainable for me to keep trying to get the $100 gigs again and again if I wanted this to keep being a flourishing, thriving business.
I think that's such a big thing that like we all have to figure out as business owners, is like the $100 customer is never going to be the $5,000 customer. And so it's up to you and what you put out there and your energy and what you attract to either pivot and sell hundreds of things that cost $100 or sell a few things that cost, $5,000. So let's talk about TikTok, which has not been mentioned yet, which I think for our podcast might be a record at this point.
Well, social media has always been integral to my business. I firmly believe that without the internet, I could not conceivably have a business as an Etch A Sketch artist of all things. I think the internet is this magical, wonderful thing that allows you to connect with this global audience, and you could truly find value in anything. And if there's enough people that want to buy it, then you can sustain yourself with that thing. And so TikTok truly is the pinnacle of everything that I feel is what makes being an artist on the internet worthwhile, because not only do you have this opportunity to connect with this global audience that I think no other social media platform has provided the same kind of reach to new audiences, but also doing video has been revolutionary for myself as an artist, recognizing that people don't just view me as an art creating robot and want to actually hear stories from me and hear me get excited about the things that I'm passionate about, and that I could actually organically connect to an audience of people just by telling my stories and hosting live streams and organically selling products that way without it necessarily coming across as too salesy, or just, making new friends and finding a new amazing community of like-minded people. So TikTok has been a pretty incredible journey for me specifically. I joined, like most millennials, right around the beginning of pandemic, and I found that it was just the pivot that I needed. I lost a lot of my in-person event work at the beginning of 2020, like most people did. And so I decided to kind of dabble into this world of video that I'd been avoiding for years and years. And when I finally ripped the Band-Aid off and started getting into it and dipping my toes, I realized like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. And I'm getting more feedback than I ever had in like the previous decade of posting my art online. Like suddenly it's like people were connecting with my work in a way that they never had before. And it just felt like this new superpower that I had with my art. And it's incredible. And it continues to be incredible. And I'm pretty sure we'll probably be talking about this more, but the biggest thing that's happened for me this year with TikTok is that I came up with this challenge to see if I could pay off my student loans using TikTok live streaming. And I was able to pay off a huge balance. It was $13,484.58. That was the exact remaining balance on my federal loans. And I got that paid off in 30 days just by going live every day on TikTok Live. So I do not exaggerate when I say that like the potential of the global platform that TikTok has provided is just immense and incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I can say as somebody who tuned into quite a few of those lives, like just watching it and like, you know, like people getting so involved was just like so fun to watch. Can you tell the listeners like a little bit about like what were you doing on the lives? How are you keeping it engaging? Any like tips for folks that want to try something similar or like just try live streaming in general?
Absolutely. So for my TikTok live streams, I do live Etch A Sketch drawings. I usually take random suggestions from the chat and I basically open the floor to them, select one at random and just start drawing. And my drawings usually take about a few minutes. And as far as advice that I could give to other live streamers, obviously not everybody's an Etch A Sketch artist, but I think we all have something of value that we could provide to an audience. It doesn't necessarily have to be live drawing or a certain kind of performance, but if you can impart wisdom or tell a good story, I think for me, what I'm always trying to do, my number one goal for a live stream is to put on a good show. So it's always me trying to provide value for them. I think TikTok is an excellent exercise in recognizing that the internet is fickle. And if they don't like what you have to offer, they're going to swipe away. And you develop kind of a thick skin about that pretty fast, which is good because it teaches you very quickly what works and what doesn't. So I found that I always try to keep things fresh. I do repeat a lot of the same requests from stream to stream because so much of my audience on TikTok is new from stream to stream, but I'm always trying to keep things different by introducing certain themes into the stream or doing certain challenges. Like for me, I'll sometimes set a timer for 1 minute and I have to try to draw something super quickly, or I will sometimes pull out a blindfold. I'll do blindfolded Etch A Sketch drawing, which always produces hilarious results. Or I'll just spend some time telling crazy stories about my job or my upbringing or whatever. And I find that a lot of my, my top viewers may not have ever even left a comment in my streams. I'll look at the stats and I'll see all these usernames that I've just never interacted with before. And that's amazing to me that people are just happy to tune in and watch what I have to say or what what kind of demonstrations I'm doing. And I think that one thing that's been really good for me, and the student loan challenge I did kind of helped kick it off, was starting to develop a consistent schedule, especially with live streaming. I've learned that people really like tuning into a routine. If I stream every day, then it's something they can depend on. People don't like to kind of have to make a new choice all the time for different things that they want to do. So they'll settle into something that they enjoy and they can just depend on that being there for them. When it's 6 p.m. Eastern, they'll know, oh, okay, well, if I want, I can tune into the Princess Etch live stream. And it's kind of like having a TV show or something. You expect it to be on at a certain time, and there's kind of a comfort you can provide in that. So for those who are just starting out with live streaming, it was quite a while where I'd been streaming for a long time on other platforms, and I hadn't really gotten any traction. So I understand firsthand how discouraging that can be, especially when you start to compare yourself to others. That's always a dangerous slope, of course. As long as you recognize, like, why are you doing it? If you're doing it because you enjoy it, it's going to be a much better time for you than if you're doing it for specific metrics. So I think in the beginning, that will help you to get through those early streams when you may not be getting the traction you were hoping for. The more you do it, you're always going to get better from when you start too. I look at my earliest streams and I recognize all the problems they had, and I'm still growing all the time too. So yeah, those are some of kind of the all over the place basic tips that I could give. But I think with TikTok specifically, it's so fun because all you need is a cell phone. You don't need the fancy cameras. You don't need all the best equipment in the world. You could start today as long as you have a cell phone and an internet connection and 1,000 fans on TikTok. So that's all you need. And those are hard things for a lot of people to get, but the barrier to entry is pretty low on TikTok compared to other places. And so I think it's worth a try. And the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to end your live stream, and it may not be the best stream you've ever had, but you can always stream tomorrow. When I first started working with Megan on my rebranding at the beginning of the year, live streaming wasn't even part of my equation at the time. It was something I was dabbling in and kind of having fun with. But between the time that my rebrand occurred and today, which was only the span of a few months, live streaming has become a significant part of my income and my business model now, which was totally left field. But I think especially in the age of the internet and the age of like every social media app running a million miles an hour and everything changing all the time, it's good to be open to pivoting. So and it's been really beneficial for me. So yeah, definitely was not my plan though at first. I never had aspirations of being a live streamer, but kind of fell naturally into it and have been having a blast.
That's awesome. Do you find that you have to like take breaks, or is it like you'll take like a day off or 2 days off or those kinds of things where you have to like just like from a mindset perspective? Like I imagine you have to take some sort of like just breather from I've been on live lots of times, and like it can be really draining, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I do find it's probably easier for me to live stream in my current life situation because I used to live in Chicago. I lived there for 11 years, and then I moved to Maryland in the middle of pandemic. So I haven't done a lot to develop a lot of personal relationships out here yet, which has been oddly beneficial for my live streaming because it's great. I could just stay home and stream for 2 hours to a group of hundreds of people. And I think it is really important though. Usually when I stream, I only stream for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, but I have been sticking to mostly a daily schedule, which I do occasionally take a day off on the weekend. And I'm in the process right now of reevaluating my whole live stream structure because I totally recognize the value of giving myself a break and taking a breather so that I can ensure that I put on a better show when I do come back. I recently took a break for a week. I had a work trip in Chicago. I was gone for like 8 days, and it felt like I was being a truant, like I was skipping work, being gone from streaming for a week. And I communicated to my audience as best I could. But of course, there's always those few people who don't see the notifications or they're not on the Discord or whatever. And so I did have a number of people who reached out to me concerned that, you know, where did she go? She's gone. She's usually here every day and now she's gone. And I was touched, but I was also like, oh man, okay, I need to really put my ducks in a row before deciding to like take a vacation, even though it was a work trip. It is interesting to find that balance. And I think I'm a bit of a unique case because I think most live streamers might more traditionally kind of ease into doing it and figuring out maybe they'll start with 1 day a week and then kind of gradually work up. And I basically went from haphazard at best to 100 hours in 1 month and then to like 2 hours a day. So I'm still finding my equilibrium right now. I still think, you know, I'm sometimes debating about doing it way less. And then there are other times when I debate about just doing it way more. So I'm still working on where that happy medium is.
One thing I wanted to ask you about is how do you balance being an artist and having a business?
Ooh, well, I guess I'm so lucky that I get to be my own boss and call most of the shots. So in that sense, I think that being an artist and having my own business work really well. I get to be the master of the final shots that I call. But even though I'm technically my own boss, I do have a different boss every day because I have different clients that I'm working on projects for. So in that sense, it's nice to just kind of do the work that the client tells me to do and fulfill the project. It's nice to like follow somebody else's orders in a way because everything else is so self-delegated. And then as an artist, I think one of the hardest challenges I have running a business as an artist is that I'm really apt to have a million ideas and start dabbling in 20 different things and then never seeing any of those projects through to the end. It could take me months and months sometimes to motivate myself to like stick with one thing and just see it from beginning to end. So when I do finish those really detailed kind of self-started projects, those are some of my highest moments of pride in my business, because I know like just how much effort it took for me to actually follow through with something that like I just wanted to do just for myself or just for fun. I love juggling all the other aspects, all the other hats of being a business owner, but I do find that when I make art my business, it does change my relationship with being an artist. It's taking my work and then putting a dollar value to it. And I think for that reason, there's a lot of art that I'll just do for myself. I think it's always a challenge to make sure to give myself time to do that. Art that I don't post on the internet, art that I don't try to commodify or monetize, art that's just for me. That's hard, recognizing I changed my relationship with art by choosing to make it my business.
I feel like so many things that you just said are so relatable for so many artists. I mean, like making time for your own artwork, making time, or like putting price tags on your artwork is one of the hardest things that you have to do, right? Like it's like, you know, something might be so near and dear to your heart, but like you have to make sure that it's like for the right audience, and like, you know, like making sure that you price according to like who that's for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also recognize a lot of the work I do. When I went to art school, I have a degree in illustration, and I think the discipline of illustration is a very sort of utilitarian discipline. It's teaching you how to solve a visual problem. And I liked that about it, was kind of treating art in this sort of like kind of business minded perspective. But I think that it is a disconnect from a lot of the more kind of fine art mentality of creating art that like comes from your soul, or art that really speaks to you. I think I would consider most of the art that I create to be more in line with like commercialism. And so there's always the idea of like, I don't like to say it because I don't really believe in it, but the idea of like selling out. There is this like, a lot of artists have this perspective that like you can't work for the man, like it's got to come from the soul, you got to blood, sweat, and tears, starving artist, baby. And I think I get there's a place for that, but I'm also just incredibly grateful that I get to practice my craft and also put food on the table at the same time. Like that is an incredible privilege that I don't want to mess around with too much. So there is this kind of like push and pull between making sure that I'm fulfilling myself creatively, but also that I'm putting bread on the table.
So Jane, if you could go back in time and tell your younger business self, maybe your younger artist self, one thing, what would it be?
I would tell her it's going to work out. It's gonna be okay. That's exactly what I would tell her. If there's anything I can say about the last 6 years of being a freelancer, is there's a lot of peaks and valleys, and boy, are there some times of anxiety. Like, yeah, I would tell her, don't worry, it's gonna work out. That's what I would tell her.
I love that. I feel like so many people that we've had on have had similar responses where it's just like in the moment, it just feels so intense and like everything's going to like crash at like, you know, like the drop of a hat. But like it all works out. It all works out, you know?
It does. It really does. And I do have to say, for anybody who is getting into freelance, I took a lot of measures to kind of prepare myself for that leap. It definitely wasn't that romantic one day I decided to leave it all behind and go into freelance. You know, I saved up for 6 months. I lived in very cheap rent. You know, I guess I paid my dues in a lot of ways, and I'm frugal. So I do what I can from a financial perspective to keep afloat. But also I have to recognize that as long as I'm putting the work out there and doing the thing, like for the last 6 years, it's worked out. And I have these moments of anxiety, like, oh, I haven't gotten a job in this many days. Like, what am I going to do? And then the next day, a job will come, and it's okay. Yeah, we have the power to make opportunities too. I think that's also like really important. We can generate work by putting the right things out there. So yeah, that's definitely. What about you guys? I'd be curious to know what you guys would say to your former selves.
Oh my God, pretty much the same, honestly. I mean, I feel like even if we're talking about myself like 2 years ago, I would be like, yo, like, you got to chill out a little bit. This is going to be all right. Like, it's going to work out. I promise. You're putting in the work every single day, and all of that's going to build up to, you know, it's all going to be worth it.
Absolutely. I was just talking to somebody on my team this morning, and I was saying that you're always going to have problems. They're just going to be different problems, no matter where you're at in your business. The problems don't go away. They just change.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot. It's true. There's never going to be like a day where I wake up and think, everything's done. I've solved everything.
Yeah, the thing about that too is like your goals like keep changing. So like once you hit a goal, it's just like, okay, I've kind of accomplished that. Now what? Like it just like keeps changing, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like the to-do list will never end. It never ever will. I remember for years, the number one thing on my to-do list was to rebrand to get a new website. And I'm so glad that you helped me cross that one off the list, Megan, because getting that one off the list felt so incredible. And then I figured, finally, I've done the thing. And then I look at my list and realize, oh my gosh, I've added like 3 years worth of things to this list since I last looked at it. But that was a huge one. That was an incredible one to get off the list.
I love it. So any upcoming projects that you're working on that you can talk about that you're excited about?
Well, I'm always in the middle of a million things, I feel. Like right now, I have a queue of about 6 or 7 commissions that I'm working on, always juggling a few things at once. I'm in the middle of finishing up an Etch A Sketch drawing of the Mona Lisa for a repeat client of mine. He is probably the best patron of my work. He's collectively likely owns at like $10,000 worth of my Etch A Sketch drawings, which is super cool. So I'm very excited to wrap that one up, and I'll be revealing that soon. Other than that, I am always in the middle of some sort of non-disclosure stuff, unfortunately, that I'm not able to talk about, but takes up a lot of my time. Great problem to have, but I guess my sights are set on continuing my live streaming. After I finish my student loan challenge, I set up a new one where I'm raising funds to replace my computer setup. I'm about halfway through that goal, which is super exciting. That's going to be a really fun shopping spree at Micro Center. I'm very excited about upgrading my home studio space, and I guess it's a vague answer, but in a lot of ways, just continuing to do what I'm doing. I have this dream of making, I've been working on a Pokédex on Etch A Sketch where I'm doing the original 151 Pokemon, and I'm about halfway through with that. So my dream is to do the Poké Rap in Etch A Sketch. It's got a long ways to go still, but that's been a passion project that I've just been having lots of fun with. Yeah, getting more bookings for the kind of work that I'm advertising more on my website now, like workshops and live event work and more of that corporate stuff, which I do have to say, by the way, Megan, I have been getting much more email inquiries for that work lately. So the website is doing its job. So very, very happy about that. Yeah. So that's basically a lot of my future always seems kind of nebulous because I really don't know what's around the bend. But at this point, I'm kind of used to it in a really good way. Now that I got the student loans paid off, everything feels like it's a little bit easier now, which is super cool, and hope to ride that wave for a while.
That's awesome. And so if our listeners are interested in checking out your artwork, maybe commissioning something, you mentioned a workshop, where do you hang out online? And we'll put all the links in the show notes too.
Absolutely. So I am at Princess Etch on all the major social media. I'm most active on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Those are the 4 big ones. I have a Discord server also linked in my bio and all that good stuff. I also have my website, princessetch.com, and that's a perfect place for people to check out the various services I provide. I love doing work for libraries, park districts, children's museums, corporate clients, conferences, personal events, all that what have you. I do live Etch A Sketch demonstrations. I host public talks. I do all the fun things. And I also sell commissioned work at my Etsy, which is also Princess Etch. So Princess Etch Etsy is a great place to find not only my commission work, but I do offer some lower price offerings so that everybody has the opportunity to support me as an artist and get a piece of my work. So I would absolutely love it if you considered following me on any of those avenues. And I live on the internet, so yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jane. This has been such a pleasure.
Oh gosh, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
And thank you to all our listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay sparkly.